Okay, good evening, everybody. It is Thursday, November 19th. This is the November public meeting of ANC 5D's Zoning and Development Committee. We have one project to discuss on the agenda tonight, which is a BZA case. We'll do some introductions, but first I'll introduce myself. My name is Kevin Horgan. I am a neighbor volunteer on the Development Committee, and I'm not an architect, but I've been through several BZA cases myself, so it's more like I've learned through osmosis. And if we can have some of the other members of the zoning committee introduce themselves real quick.
Sorry, I was muted there. My name is Marshall Morrison. I'm a member of the zoning committee. I am an architect by training, and that's what I practice and kind of live over in where Queen and Holbrook Terrace come together in that area generally, so you know where I am. But
Stacy.
I'm Keisha Shropshire. I'm ANC Commissioner for Single Member District 5D02. I'm the co-chair with Kevin, and I am not an architect, but I've experienced dealing with a lot of development in the Trinidad neighborhood.
And I'm Stacy Carbone. I live on West Virginia Avenue. I have a master's in architecture, and I work for a real estate developer in the neighborhood.
And just to give you a heads up, I know most of the zoning development committees for ANC throughout the city, their process is they listen to you guys give a pitch, and then they like vote, and there's like and then they actually do a motion to support. ANC 5D zoning, we do not do that intentionally. Our role, we view, is just to listen to it. There's a lot of zoning regulations are, they're they can be esoteric. So what we try to do is we listen to you, and then we just try to do a write-up in like layman's terms, and we present it to the ANC. They're, at the end of the day, they're the elected representatives who will make a decision whether to support a project or not. And we try to just give the facts in a distillable manner on what what zoning relief you're asking for, impacts to the community, and so forth and so forth. So if you guys want to introduce yourselves.
Yeah,
sure.
Go ahead,
Ryan. Go ahead, Ryan.
Right, yeah, I'm Ryan Petchak. I am an architect, the architect for this project and project manager. We're at 3877, a boutique firm in Georgetown.
I'm Zach Williams. I'm a land use attorney with Venable and representing the owner and the applicant of this one.
And I am Matt Medvine. I am the owner and applicant of said project and property.
Gotcha. All right. Well, I will turn it over to you. If you could, if you want to do a screen share and talk us through your project, or
Sure.
We can do this in guys can present in about 15 minutes, and then I'd like to leave like about 5 minutes for Q&A. That way, we don't have to be here all night. I know you guys all have
Sure.
better places to be.
I was telling Matt earlier, I was at a meeting last night that went until 2:30 a.m. So I think we are probably going to do better than that. I hope.
Yeah.
Let's try. Yes. Can you all see my my presentation here?
Yes.
PowerPoint. Okay, good.
Yep.
Great. So this project is located at 1301 West Virginia Ave Northeast. It is a pending BZA application. Case number is 20359. We filed several months ago. This is really the first step in the process. We haven't had any interaction yet with staff or anyone else on the project other than the initial filing. So here's the zoning map, just to orient everyone where we are. This is at the corner of West Virginia Ave and Neal Street Northeast. It's across from Gallaudet. This is the RF1 zone, and we are on the corner of this particular block, which is important for our case, and I'll explain a little bit why that's important. And you can also see it's a irregularly shaped parcel. that has a considerably wider frontage on West Virginia than it does at the rear of the alley there. This is a snapshot of a survey of this particular parcel and the existing house. It's a 2-story row home currently on the parcel. As you can see, the row home, just in the middle of the page there, it takes up a very small portion of the lot. It's a pretty big lot, actually, close to 3,600 square feet. The house itself is sitting on just a very small portion of that. You can see here as well the the orientation of the lot, the fact that it is a sort of oblong-shaped lot that has more frontage at West Virginia than it does towards the rear of the back alley there. This is the current house on the property, depicted from the corner of West Virginia and Neal. And as you can see, it's a fairly standard row home in this neighborhood with a porch roof on the front there. Our project is going to essentially be an expansion of the existing row home. And we'll get more into that, and Ryan will get more into the details of that as we go along. Now, what's interesting here is that all that grass area there on that retaining wall is part of the property, and it's private property. It's not the public space, that's the actual parcel. So you can see that we have considerable unused area here for an expansion. This is the back of the property, and you can see the existing home there. At the back there, it says 1301, just to identify it. And then there's a pretty a long ramp there, and that's all part of the parcel in the rear as well. So getting into the relief that we're requesting, ultimately this is a project that involves an expansion of an existing row home to create a multiple dwelling unit development. We are seeking relief for 5 units. And we'll get a little bit more into that and how we're going to justify that and the reasons why we think that it makes sense at this property. Our completed project would have about 6,300 square feet of total finished floor area. So that's, as you can imagine, and it's a pretty large project. But again, that's thanks to the fact that we have a pretty considerably large property here. And so we're able to do that essentially by right. We don't need to seek any relief for that. The actual building of the project, what the relief is for the actual establishment of dwelling units, as well as a penthouse. And the penthouse is simply to access the roof deck. You probably have come across these before in reviewing projects. It's a very small penthouse at the top of the structure that allows you to basically put some stairs in to get up to the roof deck. And we'll get a little bit more into that as well. But because this is a semi-detached structure in the RF1 zone, technically you need to get a special exception to be able to put a penthouse on the roof deck of this particular structure. The 5 dwelling units would involve, given we have so much floor area, 3 3-bedroom units, as well as 2 1-bedroom units. One of the 5 units would be an inclusionary zoning unit. It's an affordable housing unit that would comply with the requirements of the zoning ordinance, the zoning regulations related to inclusionary zoning units in a multiple dwelling apartment house, as they refer to it in the zoning regulations. So we'd be compliant with all of that. The IZ unit would be on the first floor of the structure, and it would be a 1-bedroom unit. As I mentioned earlier, it's a large but irregularly shaped lot. And the advantage there is that the large part of the irregularly shaped lot is the part at West Virginia. It's the frontage. It's the part that you're going to see when you're driving down West Virginia and looking at the front of the structure. The narrow part of the lot's at the back, where the alley is. And so that creates some advantages, because the lot appears from the street even larger than it actually is. The narrow tapering part of the lot is towards the back of the alley. As I mentioned, it's about 3,600 square feet total land area. Again, the only other relief we're seeking is a special exception to add the penthouse or the roof deck. This is the architectural rendering, one of the renderings of the proposed structure. And with that, I'm going to hand it off to our architect, Ryan, to get more into the design and architecture that we're proposing.
Before you jump into the design, we did review the plans. It does go about, I think, 12 point something feet beyond the adjoining property. Are you not asking for zoning relief for that?
So that is, that it actually does it, Ryan? Are we going beyond? I don't think we are.
I think one of the plans, at least the plans uploaded to the page 4.
Yeah, Zach, the rear structure at the back, the rear addition is at 12.53 feet beyond the adjacent property. So you are asking, because that was part of the application, you might have just missed it in your PowerPoint tonight, was that we are projecting 2.53 feet beyond the 10-foot setback rear addition in the RF1 zone.
So that's a part of our special exception as well.
Yes. All right, so I've switched over to my screen. Can everybody see it okay now?
Sure.
I've switched from Zach's. Great.
Yes.
He stole, I'm sorry?
We can see it.
Perfect. He stole some of my pictures, so I'm not going to go through those pictures again for you. So I'll just start from a site plan. This is to orient you, as Zach was saying. You've got West Virginia and you've got Neal. What we're proposing, let me go to existing first, just to orient. Again, we've heard it. There's the ramp, there's the structure, the existing front porch. What we're looking to do is to keep the streetscape intact in the sense of keeping the front porch. We will dig out below the front porch to allow access to the lower unit, which is one of the 3-bedroom units. We'll have 2 parking spaces at the rear. And this property, based off of how it's oriented, we will have because Neal is one of the it's not an alley access, it's off the side of Neal. So we'll have access to one of the units at the back as well. Essentially, these are the demolition plans. For lack of better terms, we are demolishing the primary structure of the building except for the front wall, front brick wall, and obviously the party wall. We are retaining the front porch and the front porch roof. We'll scroll down here. You'll need to see the elevations of the existing. So we're going to go into the floor plan. I know that you guys don't really necessarily want to go through the nitty gritty of the floor plan, but for the lack of better terms, we can start with the cellar. It's a 3-bedroom unit, full amenities. It's 3 beds, 2 baths. It's 2 full baths, kitchen. You know, it's a good sized family unit with access from the front, like I said, coming underneath the existing front porch. The first floor, which is the ground level, 4 feet above grade, is the 2 single bed units, 1 bed, 1 bath. And like we said, the front unit facing West Virginia Avenue is the IZ unit. There is a common foyer with this public stair that will go up and access the upper units. That will have also your sprinkler control valves here in this mechanical closet. But that is a shared entry off the front. Go on to the next page. So second floor is one of the, as you can see, the mid landing as the stair goes up along the party wall. And this is where we needed to have that extra 2.53 feet was because of the stair. You'll see in the next floor up, just to make it work with the vertical height and the required floor to floors that we needed to get our fire rated separations between the units, as well as acoustic ceiling. Oh, well, my camera died. The required acoustic ceiling assembly between the units. As you can see here, also 3 beds, 2 baths, similar to the unit below, different organization, but it is a 3-bed, 2-bath family style unit. Here's the 3rd floor. When we get up to the top of the steps, we need to have clearance to be able to move anything into this unit. So that's why we needed that extra space. We would, as you can imagine, move furniture, etc., and as equipment into that room. What's one of the classic errors in architecture is to have a 3-foot landing at the top of the stair and you can't get anything in. So This unit here, it's as well as 3-bed, 2-bath, and as Zach said, it has its own private access to the roof deck, which is the floor up, and it is accessed through a penthouse. The front facade, what we're looking at doing is, as I said, retaining the brick existing structure and setting back the addition off to the side to keep, as you can see in the plans again, to try to keep the street presence, the scale and hierarchy of the street the same. So instead of bringing the new structure all the way out to the front wall, we're setting it back to kind of pay respect to the scale and proportions of the existing streetscape. This is our side elevation. You can see the doghouse coming up the top. There's the penthouse. That is a sloping roof to have obviously pitched over top of the stairs itself so that we can access the roof deck. Currently, right now, being that it's BZA, not all the details have been ironed out in terms of architectural embellishment or details of trim. You know, really BZA, our submission is required to get us the assembly and the use. When I say assembly, the volume and the use. So obviously there will be further embellishments to the facade, whether it be trim and cornice work, that will come at a later stage as we keep on going through the process. Here are our shadow studies that we've provided. We've provided this site, it messes with your mind a little bit because we're showing it vertically to fit within the sheet. But as you can see here, our north arrow is skewed to the site itself. So in the lower portion here, this is the existing condition on the summer solstice. That's June 21st for all you calendar lovers. And you've got your morning, noon, and afternoon shadow studies. As you can see, based on the site location, the only impact that this has in the neighbor's property is after 2 p.m. Towards the rear yard. I'll go down to the winter solstice. That's 12/21. It's coming up. Check your calendars. And this is the similar. Obviously, the sun is lower in the sky, so shadow is cast on the rear of the adjacent structure. Going into the material study there, you can see more of an axonometric view of the proposed design. Like I said, the roof over the porch will not be occupied as porch space. You'll see a lot of people do that throughout the city. We are not proposing to do that to pay respect to the street. As I said, the structure at the front stays in terms of proportions with the adjacent structure. We are digging out to go below. And then as you can see, we are stepping back, obviously with the tapering of the site as Zach was describing earlier. We're proposing doing brick or brick form concrete at the cellar level with black iron railings, fiber cement lap siding for the most of the structure, typically dark trim windows, and then the roof will likely be asphalt shingle on the sloping roof over the penthouse, but then most likely it's going to be a membrane roof structure with decking so that it can be occupied.
Hey, Ryan, could you explain, so I see like there's like a railing on the roof, like is the portion where people can walk around just the small area, or could you, and I see it looks like I'm glad to see you're planning on putting all of the HVAC condensers on the roof. That way it mitigates the noise to the neighbors next door. Will all of the HVAC condensers be on the roof?
I believe in the submission that we had shown, we have most of the lower units. So because the rooftop is a private rooftop through the top unit. So if we provide, you want your outside air units to be accessible for maintenance, so you don't have to go through your neighbor's property to access them. So currently the top floor's AC unit is set on the roof. The other 4 are set on the back adjacent to the parking spaces.
So yeah, I guess we've looked at it and we sort of had 2 concerns that we'd like you to talk about. And Kevin was alluding to the first one, but they both revolve around the neighbor's backyard essentially. In your sun studies, you show up until 2 o'clock, and after 2 is when the neighbor would be in the shade, because as the sun's setting to the west, that's when the larger building's really gonna start throwing shadow over their backyard, as well as the units that we're talking about now. There's a noise concern there where you're lining all these HVAC units that are putting off residual heat as well as noise into that neighbor's backyard with no real accommodation toward them. So I guess those are, as we look at the plans, those are our concerns. Really, it would be, you know, we would promote that you discuss with the neighbor, you know, make sure that they're on board with what you're proposing as well. Because you have the potential to drastically affect their backyard after 2 o'clock with both sun and noise, or shadow and noise, really. There's a few other things that I guess I had questions about when we were flipping through it. One was, if you flip to your elevation, or actually maybe that section real quick might show it, if there was a section, I can remember.
Did not provide a building section.
Okay. And I think that's why I had the question, because so you have your 0 point at the first floor, but really that 35 would be measured from it wouldn't be measured from the first floor, it'd be measured from the ground at least.
Correct.
So
Correct.
I'm assuming that we're still good with the 35-foot height, but I just don't know that because it's not clear in the drawing.
You're absolutely correct. The proposed roof is at 28 feet. Looks like they have an overlap there. I've changed the max height is measured to the roof line, not the top of the parapet. And the penthouse is exempt from the maximum height restriction. We're allowed to go above that. So yeah, we're still good.
And that's where, without a section, I couldn't really see where you had it labeled, but I couldn't really see where the roof line is, because it's to the highest point of that roof, which since it's flat roof should be, you know.
Correct. Yeah, and we would crown it from the middle towards the sides to have proper drainage, rather than obviously pitch one way, because we want to have we don't want to have a massive scupper and gutter on one side, so we'd have to multiple sides.
Right.
Yep.
And then I guess the last, point of concern, but really I'd like to understand why you're looking at 5 units instead of 4, because it does at 3,600 square feet. I know we're rounding up there, but that's at 4, you're at the 900 square feet per unit. At 5, obviously you're looking to increase the density quite a bit beyond what the RF1 is. And I guess why? I mean, from a financial point of view, it's obvious it's another unit, but why does this make sense for the neighborhood?
So I'll jump in on this one. It's honestly, at the end of the day, it's to make it financially viable. If once we get over that 3 unit mark, then we need to provide an inclusionary unit. And basically the decision was either to go to 3 units or go to 5 units, because at 4 units, making that 4th unit inclusionary, it doesn't cover the cost of increasing it or making it rather. And by going to the 5th unit, we felt that it allowed us to provide affordable housing to the neighborhood, which is definitely needed. B, provide an extra smaller unit that was affordable for whether it be students or a larger class, and then also still provide 3 units that were relatively priced to a point that a family could afford it, or a young student, what have you, could afford it. So that was the thought process behind that. Whereas if we go and just pursue 3 units, in order to make the project financially viable, they would have to be built in such a way that, again, the structure would remain more or less the same, barring, even if we had to cut off that 2.5 feet, the back of the neighboring building would still be experiencing 90% of the same shade, but it would still be within right. If we had to make it 3 units, they'd be more expensive and they'd price out a majority of the population, more or less.
Right, because they would be almost 2,000 square feet on average.
Yeah, they'd be large units that would only be geared towards the upper echelon, if you will. So the goal would be to price this to be more of the middle income average person, and make it more with the bonus of obviously having the affordable unit thrown in the mix as well. And also obviously making it financially viable for the project to happen altogether in the first place.
So you guys are just down the road from, there's been a lot of development on Moore Street. And and again, I'm just giving you, there are neighbors who just on a matter of principle oppose even 3-unit conversions. And their philosophy is that if you allow developers to get 3 units, then that will feed into the calculus of what they're willing to pay for an unrenovated row house, and that is causing a lot of the financial pressure. And I will say there are neighbors who are going to oppose this as a 5-unit. I think you probably would have had a much easier time selling this if you were giving a family size IZ unit, because right now you're asking, you've grown this project a lot. It's really pushing out to the edges of the property. There is going to be a negative impact to the next door property with shade and noise because you've got 4 condensers back there. I just think it'd be a lot easier more palatable if the community got an affordable unit out of this, like a family size. You're proposing a pretty small, like when I looked at these plans first, I was like, it's a shame they didn't just put a 3-bedroom on the first floor as well. And I don't know if that's something you would consider.
Again, unfortunately, running the numbers, the windfall between a 1-bedroom inclusionary and a 3-bedroom inclusionary it's almost the entire profit of what the project would be. So the investors wouldn't have any interest in pursuing the project if you were to do that. And then with regards to, again, emphasizing the fact that the size of the structure, barring the 2.5 feet that we're looking for the relief from at the rear yard expansion, the rest of the size is by right. The 4 condensers, if that is as big of a concern as it sounds like it might be, we could certainly move them up to the roof. That's not a game changer for us. But if concerns are regarding the structure, or the size of the structure, we would emphasize that we're not looking to do much that's beyond our right out of the gate. And unfortunately, making one of the 3-unit family size units inclusionary or affordable, it does not make it financially viable, unfortunately.
Trying to see other questions. Were there other questions from other neighbors who called into the meeting?
And I guess we'd be happy to discuss, and if it comes up during the ANC, if the neighborhood feels strong enough, we could pivot and pursue 3 units rather than 5, but just with the understanding that in doing so, again, to make the project financially viable, you no longer have any affordable units, and the 3 units that are created will be considerably larger and more at a higher price point.
And that might be the right thing, because a smaller unit might have less negative impact to the adjoining neighbor. So
the size will remain the same. The size of the structure would remain the same. The units themselves, you'd have less units, but the units themselves would be larger because now you would have 1 unit maybe be in the basement, 1 unit be on the first floor, and then another unit be on the second and third, or some variation. What we've looked at is maybe doing 1 unit in the basement and two units next to each other being 2 towers. But again, emphasizing that 95% of the size of this structure, actually it's greater, I think it's a 98% of this structure is by right. So the size of the structure won't change, and you'd still have 3 condensing units somewhere. Again, we can put them on the roof if that alleviates some concern. We have no issue with that, and we're happy to work with the neighbors to do that, to take care of that. But again, the size of the structure is more or less going to remain the same. It's just instead of getting 5 units out of the same building, we're looking to try and get, or we'd be getting 3 instead of 5, excuse me.
Right. And it may or may not, by right, you can build it, other than that 12 foot, you're right. By right, you can build it that size, but it may or may not make sense to the added construction cost if you're only building 3. So it may or may not actually stay the same size. But I think the bigger concern is we're really starting to push, we're almost trying to rezone this lot without rezoning it by just asking for a whole series of small tweaks here and there that add up to a large change in density. And I think that's the other piece of it is, what is the neighborhood getting out of the density? And right now it's the one single unit IZ unit, as well as the other units, but that's the benefit as far as making affordable housing right now that we can see. But
I mean, yeah, 4 of those units will sell at market rate, and they'll, and you will do well with them. But I just, I'm just giving you, we see a lot of these cases. And the thing is, we want you to be successful. We want as much development. We know in general, if the supply is over constrained, that is probably the fundamental thing that's pushing the forcing function on on prices across the city. And we do need to build more. But what we try to do is try to guide developers into what I think is a win-win, where the community is really happy and you don't get the neighbors coming out with pitchforks opposing your project. And right now, as Marshall said, you're offering a 1-bedroom IZ unit. Probably would have been a lot easier if this was if that first floor was a family size IZ unit.
So then do you guys feel the neighborhood would be more receptive to the 3, because we've run the numbers, the structure would stay pretty much the same size, literally the same size, if we pivoted to the 3-unit model. But again, you wouldn't be getting any affordable housing out of it. And again, it wouldn't, the only thing that would be changing is the density in that scenario. And it's 2 units, and one of which of the 2 units you'd be chopping off the table is an affordable unit.
I can tell you the answer to the question is yes, because there was a BZA case this last year for 1501 West Virginia, or I'm not sure if I got the address correct. I think it was Michael Cross was the architect for 1501 West Virginia, literally just 2 blocks up north, and it was a smaller lot. But they were doing similar, they had an existing row house, they expanded into the yard, and they went for a 3-unit. And I believe the community, and I think the ANC did support that. But even then, it wasn't clear sailing either. So I think the ANC would support, but yeah, they probably would support. Now, give me a second. Keisha's just
Kevin
Shropshire has just asked me to elevate her. How do I do this?
Kevin, this is Zach Hoffman,
Hey, Zach.
Commissioner-elect for 5D06. So this is in my single-member district, and we don't currently have anyone in that seat right now. Do you have anything from the neighbors? Have you discussed the plans with them? Are they aware of what you're proposing? Or have they made any comments or anything on this?
Is this question? Right. I mean, we haven't. This meeting is the first time. The BZA
no, I'm asking them. I'm asking the proposer.
So we have started neighborhood outreach. Actually, currently my brother is living in the house, and he's been speaking to several of the neighbors. The neighbors that he's spoken to thus far haven't seemed terribly opposed to it. They also are quite elderly. Some of our more immediate neighbors are more elderly, and have one of them, the immediate neighbor, she's a very sweet woman, but she straight up said, I don't really leave the house, so it doesn't really matter to me that much. But I don't think that is a accurate reflection of how the rest of the neighborhood truly feels. So he's actually started working on that now in the last week and a half, 2 weeks, to get a better feel for how the neighbors would feel. And again, and Ryan can bring it up if you guys would be interested to see it, but we've already run the numbers and we have designs for the 3-unit. And the whole point of reaching out to the neighbors is to say, look, these are the 2 options to more or less make the project viable. So we have a 3-unit design that is done, if you guys would be interested in, not done, but the initial concept similar to this, if you guys would want to see it. But it's very similar to the design over at 1501 West Virginia. We just personally, from the development ownership side, we felt that the neighborhood would be more benefiting a 5-unit design project than a 3-unit. As someone that has lived in that area, and I live in, my brother, whether my brother or I, we live in almost all of the projects. We're a bit of a unique developer in that we live in almost all the projects that we develop for at least 6 to 8 months. I've lived in some of them for more than a year or two, while we feel out the neighborhood and figure out what we're going to do with it. And as coming from that position, as someone that's lived in the neighborhoods, we felt that, especially given that this was across the street from a school, that it would make more sense to have something that would be more accessible to the general population. Now, granted, it's Gallaudet, and we're not going the lengths to make it audio or visual impaired, but it doesn't change the fact that there's a lot of support staff and other people involved with the school that could benefit from having units that are affordable, because from what we looked at the 1501 West Virginia Avenue, that's a 3-unit, it's on the higher end. Those 3 units, I believe the cheapest one went for over 700,000, which is not, an entry level unit for most people to be able to afford. And again, while we can do that and make the project viable if we pursued that course, and if the neighborhood would rather do that, then sure, we can do that. But we just felt that it doesn't really serve the greater good creating fewer, more expensive units when we have the opportunity, given the size of the structure, that again will basically stay the same, whether it's 3 or 5. Why would we'd rather pursue an avenue that would allow us to make more attainable units that could bring more color and history and liveliness to the neighborhood. And we'd be providing the parking that's needed to alleviate those concerns. We don't have any parking issues on the street. My brother's lived there for over a year at this point, and we're over there several times a week, and we've never had any issues with the parking. So we're not concerned about that. The trash cans would be constrained to our unit. In some situations, we've had concerns with that factor. And with regards to the condensing units, again, we'd be happy to put that on the roof if that is something that truly is a concern with the community, and that's something we can certainly do for now. But if you guys are interested, Ryan can pull up the 3-unit scheme if you guys would like. But it'll be similar to what is on 1501 West Virginia.
Kevin, this is Clarence Lee. It wasn't Keisha, it was Clarence Lee that you just elevated.
Yes.
When you said that the unit, as a matter of right, it would be the same size, but you were asking for special exceptions, and Kevin alluded to the 2.5 feet beyond going the 10-foot, that would be a special exception. So how would it say the same density without any special exceptions, or the same size?
So when I said that, I clarified saying that if we wanted to avoid having to go for the building size relief, we would reduce the rear addition by the 2.5 feet. And we can do that if that's that much of a concern. But it's, in terms of the overall size of the structure, that 2.5 feet is maybe 5% of the structure, less than that, I believe. I can run the numbers real quick. But regardless, aside from that 2.5-foot extension beyond the 10 feet that's by right, everything else we would be building up. We could build out to it by right.
So you can build out the width by right?
Correct. The width and
Height.
10 feet.
Up to 35 feet. Okay.
Correct. Yes. Basically everything you're looking at, and then minus 2.5 feet on the rear addition. Everything else is by right. We're sticking to within our by right limits.
For volume.
Correct.
And one of the things when you were showing the plans, the keeping the uniformity of the block, so you wouldn't be making the front the same brick, using paneling on the addition on the side.
Yes, sir.
Correct. The initial plan is we'd be using hardy plank, which is the higher end fiber cement siding. It's not vinyl or anything like that. It's the higher end stuff that you see in a lot of the nicer buildings.
Okay.
That would only be on the extension.
So
Keisha,
Keisha is here. Thanks, Kevin, for unmuting me earlier. So the question that I originally had, I think that that was already asked in terms of, have you gotten any feedback from the neighbors? I know you said you had one neighbor who is a senior resident, and she seemed to be, she says she hardly ever comes out, so it doesn't matter. But there are letters that are sent out to residents within 200 feet, and I'm just wondering, have those letters already been sent out? Because I think it'd be beneficial to find out for, the upcoming commissioners that are coming in. Like, I don't know if it'll happen before the end of the year, but it'd be good to have you come and talk to the neighbors and let them find out exactly what their perspectives are and share with them what you're presenting, because I think it'd be good to show the by right project and then look at the one that you're requesting special exception for.
I appreciate that's a great recommendation. I'll make sure my brother, we add that to his packet that he's walked around with. Alluding back to what I had mentioned before, for the projects we do, we're not a high volume developer. We'll do 1 or 2 a year, mostly because just we're doing this, it's my brother and I, and we live in them, and we get to know the neighbors in the neighborhood, and we get very ingrained in the neighborhood, and we make it more enjoyable. We both have day jobs. This isn't a full-time thing for us. So he's walked around thus far with what he's done. He's walked around with the packet that you guys have seen, showing everyone, look, this is what we're looking to do. And we make sure we answer any questions, and they have the renderings, and they have a good idea of exactly what we're looking to do. We don't just gloss over, and you understand most people won't understand if you just say, oh, we want to do a 6,300 square foot building with 5 units, that kind of their eyes might glaze over. So we're very clear and upfront with what we're looking to do, and when we discuss this with them, what we're looking for them to either support or give feedback on, or just outright, sometimes they just outright say they don't support it, which everyone's entitled to their opinion, and we have to deal with that. So with that being said, I think that's a great suggestion. Letting everyone know that this is what's by right versus what's not. So, I'll get with Ryan after this, and we can put together a quick rendering that would show that there really isn't much of a difference in terms of the structure size that's by right versus what we're requesting. In the penthouse, if that was that egregious, we could get rid of the penthouse and we could do a roof hatch that's by right. Again, it's just, the penthouse, in our opinion, isn't really impacting anybody at that point. It's high enough up. It's not really going to be in the sight line, given that we've centered it on the building, and it's just more convenient, in my opinion, as someone that's lived in a house that has a roof hatch and also a house that has a penthouse. It's just much more convenient to have a normal door at the top, at the roof. So we just felt that this wasn't impacting that much, so that's why we're pursuing this. But again, we can definitely add to our packet a rendering that shows what's by right, which would include the roof hatch in lieu of a penthouse, and then also lopping off the last 2.5 feet for that. I believe it's a 12-foot stretch of the width of the building, more or less. But yeah, we can show that so that everyone has a better understanding.
Because I do think the 3-bed, like for instance, the house that was built on 1501, yeah, they built out, but they also kind of did something more interesting architecturally on the 3rd floor. So there are community benefits just from the property. Like right now, what you're basically proposing is an apartment building. It goes straight up, just all the way up. There's no like kind of dormers. There's no effort to make that 3rd story kind of blend in more to the rest of the block. So, that is one of these things where if you're going to only do 3 units, that does matter. I will say that we've seen a lot more developers, when they're going to do that extra floor, they'll step it back, maybe 5 or 6 feet. That way, the appearance from the block, it doesn't look so jarring, like you're suddenly just seeing this tall thing going up. And again, like, I think people would be more willing to stomach that if they thought there was a family size IZ unit out of here. I do want to give people a heads up. I do want to be respectful of people's time. We need to cut this off at 8:30. So I'm just, we'll keep talking, and I will try to keep listening, and I want to let other people ask you questions. But I just want to give people a heads up. We have to knock this off in about 8 minutes.
I just want to follow up with Commissioner Shropshire, and that's a requirement, the mailing within 200 feet, not to walk. So it has to be mailed in the package that's to show that it was mailed. So that has to be done with the BZA.
I can speak to that. So that's actually, we prepare the mailings, but the city mails them out.
Okay.
And I just looked up the record, and it looks like they mailed them out on 3 days ago this week. So this is actually good timing to start.
Oh, so they're receiving them now.
Correct.
Because our mail has been slow around here, so.
Yeah.
And touching on your comment about the lack of features along the roof line, if you walk down that street, there actually aren't any real dormers. There's some small cornice features on some of this block that are maybe 2 feet tall that are almost like a little roof ledge at the top, but most of them are just a regular standard square cornice, which you can see in the neighboring building on the rendering. So if we were to make a setback dormer, we didn't think that it would really help it blend in any more than it would be going straight up. And which we've done. We did a project down on Capitol Hill that we found out while we were living there, and we got to know the neighborhood, that they felt very strongly that they liked the fact that all those homes had very steep dormers that were pitched and had fish scale roof shingles, so we ended up doing that and incorporating that into the project, and it blended in. In this neighborhood, there isn't anything like that. So we didn't feel that it was anything that was pertinent needing to do, because that, on top of not blending in with anything, it also adds considerable expense and cuts into living space.
If you pull up the project on Google Street View, your adjacent property does have sort of a sloped roof at the top. So, I mean, your rendering isn't actually showing the complete conditions. As far as, I believe I have the right property that I'm pulled up, right?
No, you do. It's not that. Yeah. It's not that 2 foot cornice. It's actually, we measured it. It's a 2 foot kind of cornice feature at the top, which we could add that in to carry over. But you see, it's basically every 2 houses that has that feature. There you go. But it's not a sloped roof. It's a flat roof, and that has that 2 foot little, it's 2 feet tall.
Now, I know it sounds really minor, but I have seen BZA cases where they look at that small little piece of trim and they've called that a rooftop architectural element. Like, so are you sure you're going to be allowed to go straight up? I'm positive I've seen, and I know that, we look at that and like, that's not special, but I've seen them like call that an architectural element, and they've made people step back from it.
You're 100% correct. In this particular situation, we actually just got through a velocity meeting for the house that I'm currently living in a couple months ago, and we had a feature like that, and it was a very standard plain Jane cornice piece. And the one reason we were able to get it approved is that we stipulated that it was to remain in place and wasn't to be touched, and it wasn't damaged. So yes, we're confident that we don't have to set that back 3 feet. Now, if it was a larger true dormer that you could not go straight up by without impacting, then that would not be the case. But given that the cornice that's currently on our building, it's just an appendage on the face of the building. It's not actually incorporated with the roof. It's just a small appendage that's fastened to the face of the roof. They do allow it because we go straight up, keeping that feature in place without having to damage or touch it whatsoever. But you are correct. With the regulations that they changed, I believe it was in 2018, 2 years ago, the architectural roof elements, they not only protected those cornices, but they also protected these beautiful original front porch roofs that,
yep.
that you can't.
We're keeping, that's why we're keeping it here as well, specifically for that reason on this project. So
Can I ask about that tree? I didn't see that in the plans. Are you removing that giant tree in the yard?
Tree on the front right corner, no, we are not removing that. But the tree in the back, right, see, so that tree in that right there, that's not on our property. We wouldn't be touching that. That's a beautiful tree. We love that tree. No, but the smaller spruce that's in the back, yes, the plan would be to remove that.
Okay, I thought that large mature tree was inside the yard for a
It's a
second.
beautiful tree. Also, we would not want to touch it. We love that.
Are you guys planning, we're running out of time here, that granite wall, which would have come from, the granite would have been from the old Cleveland Park quarry. I've seen some developers decide just to demo these walls instead of having them repointed, and this wall is almost intact. What's your plan for that wall?
100% to keep it.
Yeah, I think that the key, and we'd have to try to find stone to match as closely as possible to infill the old driveway.
Yeah. If you want some stones, I got some granite for you. About a month ago, a developer completely demoed on Orange Street an old granite wall, and he was about to put it into a dumpster. I was like, what are you doing with that? So literally the entire remnants of a granite wall are in my backyard right now. If you need some Cleveland Park quarry granite. I couldn't bear it going into a dumpster. And it sucks that it's not protected. If we were in Capitol Hill, you couldn't touch it. It'd be protected, but we don't have that. And I hate to see these old walls get demoed just for taste, because it's been there since probably the 1930s, whenever that house was built. So I want to leave time for some final question, but I do want to ask the commissioners, what is the next step? Do you want them to, the next step usually is they present at one of the public community meetings like the ANC or a single member district. So question goes to Keisha or Clarence, like what is the next step? When do you want them to return to the community?
When is the hearing? Do they have a hearing date?
It's January 27th, so we still have some time.
Well, I would like, because they're new, I would just like for them to be at the January meeting to present to the new commissioners. I'm outgoing. Zach is on the call, but he's incoming, but they're, we have all new commissioners in Trinidad. So would like for them to participate and make the decision, quite honestly.
Would a decision at the January meeting be too late for your hearing, or would that be well timed?
No,
when's your January meeting?
Can I jump in? Can I jump in here to say that before they even come to the commission, they need to go to the community and talk to them.
True.
And find out exactly what they think. Like, I think, to be honest, I think a January hearing is too quick. Why? Because the holidays are coming up, and it really doesn't give them much time to really pull people together to find out what they're thinking about the project. Like, there are times where, we may request the applicant to request a delay in the hearing only so that they can adequately get the perspective from the community.
So I can tell you that we fully intend on going into the ANC meeting with ideally letters of support. That's how we handle it. For the last one, we had to go into this one again, I'm referring to as what I'm living in now. We had to go through a BZA process, and I got the letters of support from every immediate neighbor that was being touched or visible of this project. And I got a few that were beyond that, but the ones that the ANC mostly cared about were the ones that could see this project and were directly impacted. So we fully intend on doing the community outreach and going into that January ANC meeting with these letters of support, or in some fashion, the neighborhood feedback.
Right. And I agree with Clarence, too, that the decision can be made by the incoming commissioners for the area.
So I want to be respectful of people's time. When is the next ANC? I think it would be helpful for you to present either this project or the 3-unit or a combination of both at the next, at the December ANC meeting. That way, the new, and we can give the new incoming ANC commissioners a heads up on, and they can see it on December, and that way they'll be more informed when they vote on it Because like these zoning committee meetings aren't well attended, whereas the ANC meeting, there could be 50 people, community members visiting. That's really that's the outreach really where we'll see. ANC meeting is the second Tuesday of the month. So whichever December that is, what's the date calendar here? December 8th. So Keisha, can we assume that they can be on the agenda for the December meeting to present our plans?
Well,
Yes, I would.
I sort of agree with Keisha with the a meeting of the residents somehow to meet with them directly so they can get adequate time to ask questions and digest it, like she said. If it's at the ANC meeting, they get introduced to it, but they don't get that chance to go over it. Oh,
sorry, Clarence.
Go ahead, Keisha, but I think you're going to follow up with. Go ahead.
And to add to that is that the commissioners always look to see what did the community think about this, and I hear what you're saying, that you would come to the January meeting with letters of support, but there will be questions inquiring about, what level of engagement was there. Did you go to the community beforehand? And I commend you for, going out and, talking to the neighbors and getting a feel for what they think about the project. But I think it's the responsibility of like the ANC of the single member district to kind of make sure that their residents know about this and that they have ample opportunity to weigh in.
Is there an SMD meeting that we could pull together? Is there something that's held regularly in this SMD?
There's not currently anyone in the 5D06 seat.
No.
I'm the commissioner elect for that seat, but yeah, Jason's not there.
Well,
so we used to have a single member district meeting for all three, and that, like he said, the seat is vacant now. But we, meaning Clarence and myself, who are the other commissioners in Trinidad, have the ability, we can call a special meeting, like a single member district meeting. Mm-hmm. And Zach, you could come to that, and you can have an opportunity to present. You all can have an opportunity to present to the community. We would notify the community that there was going to be a meeting and that you were going to be presenting on this, and they would have an opportunity to come.
So an idea, we could do that, and I think that's a great idea to do that, but could we do that, and then on top of that, possibly buying us another month, because you guys meet once a month, correct? The second or third Thursday every month? Could we do that along with meeting with you guys again in a month? That would give us another 4 weeks, really 3 weeks, because next week's kind of a lost cause, but 3 weeks to do some more neighborhood outreach. And then we could meet back with you again and share some of the feedback we've received. And then depending on when that other meeting is, we could maybe discuss, if it's before your next meeting, we could also discuss the feedback we got through that. The main point behind that is, given that you guys are more of the, I don't want to say educated because that has a negative connotation to the rest of the group, but the more informed group in this specific field, that are kind of helping guide the rest of the community in understanding what we're looking to do. So we definitely want to make sure that not only do we get the community feedback and get them on board, but we also get you guys to be on board with not only agreeing with the project, but also agreeing that the community understands and is on the same page and supports this project.
I agree. I think that it would be beneficial. I'm not saying that you shouldn't come to the ANC. I think that it may be beneficial for you to come to the December meeting and present, not expect to get a vote, just to present and share what your project is so we can inform the community there. And then also there may be an opportunity to have a single member district meeting so you can get specific comments from those who are in that area, surrounding where your project is.
I'd totally we'd be open to that. And that might be a better avenue to add a second opportunity along with our individual community outreach to have a mass gathering of allowing everyone to see it and have the discussion. So I would be open to that for sure.
I would like to ask Zach, in this SMD meeting, I mean, I'm looking at the calendar. In December, it would have to be the week of the 13th.
Mhm.
If we push it back that far, and I think November would have to go with the week of the 29th after Thanksgiving.
So I guess we can. I guess can we talk about a date offline?
Yeah,
Okay.
I have to. I actually have to leave, and when I leave, I have to take my laptop when the meeting ends. So it's really important, I think, to get community feedback. There'll be 50 people at the public ANC meeting on the second Tuesday of December. I think that's your next step, and I think offline, if Zach or one of the current commissioners wants to organize a separate community meeting, I'll provide the emails for Matt, and you guys can coordinate that. But I definitely think, just for the sake we can wrap up this meeting, I think the next step at minimum is Matt and his team present at the public meeting in December. And that way, at least the whole community has a chance to understand what's being proposed. So can we wrap up on that?
Yeah, but just
I would agree with that.
well, I don't know what the agenda is going to be for December, and it would have to be short, so it wouldn't benefit them on a short presentation. But let's close out.
Okay.
Zach, I'll send him an email and Keisha to see which way you want to go. I'm for the SMD meeting instead of so they can get a full presentation. But I understand we have to sign off, so go ahead, Kevin.
Okay.
Thank them for coming out tonight. Appreciate the input. And that's all I have to say on that one. Have a good evening.
Zach, do you have my info? Just want to make sure I can contact you.
I have the original email chain that Kevin sent me, so I think I have all of you guys together.
Okay, great. I'll reach out. We'll reach out to you as well.
Okay.
Since you're the incoming commissioner.
Great, thank you.
All right. Cheers, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Have a great night.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Cheers.